The air inside the funeral home felt heavier than it should have. Too clean, too quiet. The kind of quiet where everyone has something to say but keeps their mouth shut out of respect or fear. I stepped in alone, no husband to squeeze my hand, no warm eyes to meet mine, just the soft scent of lilies mixed with the starch of suits and the kind of murmurs that sound like secrets. I walked past rows of people I hadn't seen in years. His cousins, his former coworkers, faces that turned politely toward me but didn't linger. They'd shown up out of obligation, not grief. At the front, in the best seat in the room, sat her, Alyssa, my sister-in-law. Her hands were clasped neatly on her lap, chin lifted like she was attending a board meeting, not her brother's funeral. Her black dress fit like it was tailored for triumph, not mourning. People came up to her like she was the widow, like she had lost everything. When she spotted me, she gave me a smile. Not warm, not forced. Just efficient. As if we both knew she had already moved on to the next act in her script. I tried not to let it rattle me, tried. I found a seat near the back. A few people nodded. One aunt squeezed my shoulder with pity, then quickly turned away. And then, I caught it. A conversation up front. Quiet. Clipped. My name didn't come up once. They spoke about transfers, property, and how smoothly he handled everything before the end. I strained to listen, but one of them glanced back, noticed me, and the conversation dropped like a curtain. Maybe I was paranoid. Maybe it was just grief messing with my head. After the service, people milled around awkwardly, offering hollow condolences. I nodded, I thanked, I smiled. Then came the invitation to the house, his family's home, now more hers than mine. I almost declined. Almost. But something about Alyssa's smug composure made me want to see it through. The living room looked the same as it always had. Dustless, sterile, curated. Like a place designed to be shown, not lived in. The lawyer stood near the fireplace, flipping through a slim folder. I didn't recognize him. Not the family's usual guy. He introduced himself in that polished, detached tone attorneys often use. Said he'd been retained by my husband a year ago. That got my attention. He cleared his throat, unfolded the will. It was short, efficient, brutal. I waited for my name. It never came. Everything. House, savings, stocks, personal effects, passed to Alyssa. Every last thing. I didn't speak. Couldn't. My throat closed up like a door slamming shut. Around me, silence fell. Alyssa didn't look surprised. If anything, she looked bored, like she'd already known for months. Maybe she had. A cough cut the air. Hers, light, but not accidental, as if she was warning herself not to smile. The lawyer nodded, closed the folder, and just like that, it was done. I stayed seated as everyone stood. Some didn't meet my eyes. Others gave me soft, useless pats on the shoulder. "I'm sure there's been some kind of mistake," one cousin whispered, avoiding eye contact. Another murmured something about checking with a second lawyer. Maybe it was a clerical error. Maybe. But I knew better. Later, in the kitchen, someone offered me coffee I didn't want. Alyssa floated through the room like she owned the air. And maybe now she did. I slipped out before dessert trays came out. No one stopped me. Back in my car, parked halfway down the street, I broke. It wasn't the kind of cry that wrenches out of you like a sob. It was silent, dry, the kind that burns behind your eyes because it's holding back too much to let anything fall. I pulled out my phone without thinking. Opened my voicemails. One from him, 6 months old. His voice came through flat, cold. "Hey, I'll be late. Don't wait up." That's it. But something in his tone, like I was an inconvenience, made my stomach twist. I played it again. This time, I noticed how he didn't say my name, how his voice had already left me long before his body did. I looked down at my wrist, the charm bracelet he'd given me on our 10th anniversary. I used to rub it like a talisman, something to remind me I was loved. Now it felt like a chain. I sat there for I don't know how long, watching shadows shift on the dashboard, but I couldn't leave it like this. I drove back to the house, said I forgot my scarf. It was a lie, but no one questioned it. I walked in through the back. Habit, I guess. Their voices drifted from the living room. She was laughing. So was the lawyer. "Knock out that wall, open the space, make it more modern," she said. Finally, a house that feels like mine. They hadn't even waited a day. I stood there, behind the archway, where they couldn't see me. And in that moment, everything snapped into place. I didn't lose a husband today. I lost the last illusion I ever had about this family. 2 days after the funeral, I sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by unopened sympathy cards and a stack of overdue utility bills. The house felt smaller now, and colder. Maybe it was the quiet. Or maybe it was because everything inside it reminded me of what was no longer mine. Our photos still lined the hallway, but they felt like props in someone else's story. The overhead light flickered faintly above me as I stared at the water bill. Due next week. I reached for a pen but ended up gripping it too tightly. It snapped in my hand. That tiny sound, plastic breaking, was louder than the room itself. His voice wasn't in the house anymore, but his absence, that echoed in every wall. I grabbed our wedding photo off the counter, one we took in Monterey, by the pier. I hadn't really looked at it since he died. Now, I noticed it had been posted on social media, by Alyssa. Cropped, captioned, "Forever grateful for the memories." She cut me out entirely. I held the frame tighter, not out of sentiment, but out of disbelief. This wasn't just about grief. This was a rewrite, a quiet, methodical erasure. And I was starting to suspect it wasn't just her. The doorbell rang. I opened it to find Elaine, an old coworker I hadn't seen in years. She'd heard about the funeral, brought coffee, and something in her eyes told me she wasn't just stopping by out of kindness. "You holding up?" she asked, stepping inside. "Trying," I said, managing half a smile. We sat in silence for a few minutes before she finally said, "Back when I worked with Rowan, he mentioned revising some legal stuff, said it was during a rough patch. Mental health stuff. You know how he got." I didn't know. Or maybe I did, but hadn't wanted to. She looked at me over her mug. "Just saying, if he wasn't in the right state of mind when he changed anything important, that can be challenged, especially if someone else helped push it." I leaned back. My fingers drummed against the table. Elaine was retired, but she still had the instincts of a paralegal, and what she just said didn't feel like casual small talk. "Can you help me look?" I asked. She nodded. "Absolutely. But you need to know. Sometimes, the ones smiling the most at funerals have the most to hide." That night, I stayed up sorting through the dusty folders Rowan had kept in his desk. Most of it was junk, old tax returns, printer receipts, flyers for junk we never bought. But one envelope caught my eye, statements from our joint account. 2 months before he died, multiple large transfers were made to a private fund I'd never heard of. Thousands of dollars, quietly moved under something labeled asset reallocation. Oddest of all, the confirmation emails were CC'd to Alyssa's personal email. The pit in my stomach hardened. I logged into our online banking portal, or tried to. My access had been revoked. A month before he died. I stared at the screen. The words didn't make sense, but the silence around them did. While I was making his soup and changing his meds, he was transferring our money away. With her. It wasn't just death that took from me, it was him, alive, making sure I had nothing left. The rage didn't come like fire, it came like ice. I called Elaine the next morning. We met at a downtown cafe. She brought her old legal pad, and I brought copies of everything. I didn't cry. I didn't even raise my voice. "I want to do this right," I told her. "No drama, just facts." We made a timeline, dates, signatures, digital trails. Later that day, I walked into the bank, a smile on my face so calm it startled me. I asked to speak to the manager, told him I just needed some clarification on some transfers and a signature on a notarized document. He pulled the file. I looked at the signature. It wasn't his. Rowan had awful handwriting, left-handed, a little shaky. The one on that document was neat. Too neat. I didn't say a word. I just asked for a copy. He hesitated. I insisted. He handed it over. I thanked him and left. That evening, I stopped by the bookstore and bought a new notebook, not for journaling, for documentation. On the first page, I wrote, "What they didn't expect me to learn." I closed it, paid, and walked back to my car, letting the evening sun hit my face. For the first time in days, I didn't feel powerless. I felt sharp. As I reached for my keys, my phone buzzed. A new email alert. From a private security firm I didn't recognize. Subject line: Emergency contact update. Message: You have been removed as the emergency contact for the estate at 402 Maple Lane. I stared at the screen. They weren't just trying to erase my name. They were preparing to erase my existence. I woke before dawn, haunted by the lawyer's voice and Alyssa's composure. The silence of the house seemed to pulse around me. I dressed quietly, not wanting to wake the past. In Rowan's old study, I found the safe deposit box key he insisted I always carry. I opened the box in trembling fingers. Instead of deeds, letters, or backup copies, there were only blank envelopes and a single pen. No keys, no statement, no signature. Nothing. It felt like he left me an eraser instead of ink. Anger rose cold and sharp. If he intended to erase me, he handed me nothing to fight with. I locked the box, but inside, I resolved. I would not beg, I would dig. I called Elaine, voice low. I needed her help tracing amendments, changes recorded at odd hours, signatures made in hospital gowns. Later, at the county clerk's office, I asked for amendment records on our joint property. The deed file showed a change 6 months ago. My name had been quietly removed. The signature looked too neat. And it was dated when Rowan had been admitted to the hospital. Elaine's face when I showed her the photocopy told me everything. She coaxed email headers from public court backups and found the deed change sent for approval from Rowan's address, but CC'd to Alyssa. She left no trace that I could fight, until now. Fury and fear tangled inside me when the local paper ran a story. Seren was lauded as the sole caretaker of Rowan in his final months, a widow steeped in devotion. The article insinuated I'd been distracted, distant, cold. Comments flowed. She left before he got sick, one commenter claimed. Another, must have been planning her exit. I felt each word hit me. Betrayal again, this time from those who watched but never understood. I typed a calm draft rebuttal, sent for Garrett's review, knowing she'd already started rewriting public opinion. That night, I sat surrounded by the documents, the deed change, the printout of the article, the emails sorted in folders. I replayed old voicemails from Rowan. 1. I'm sorry I haven't been myself lately. Please trust me. It sounded gentle, desperate. Now it felt like manipulation. He didn't disinherit me, he rewrote our story behind my back. I printed everything, stacked it neatly, my proof pile. I crafted a redacted memo and sent it to a trusted family friend whose loyalty I guessed. Timing was critical. I flicked off the lights in my home office and walked to the door. The hallway light bloomed, then vanished. The backup drive blinked, then went dark. My breath slowed. A voice, soft, cruel, whispered, "You shouldn't have poked the ledger." The lights bowed out completely. I realized then I wasn't fighting for paper, I was fighting for my name. The courthouse air was stale, paper dry, and cold, even in the afternoon heat. Elaine sat across from me, glasses low on her nose, quietly comparing one signature to the next. She didn't need to say it. My gut had already told me what the documents were screaming. Rowan's signature hadn't changed, not once, over a 6-month span, including dates he was sedated in a hospital bed. Nobody's handwriting stays that perfect. Not through illness, not through grief, not unless someone else was doing the signing. Elaine made a call, soft-voiced and precise. An old colleague, now a forensic handwriting analyst, agreed to look over the files. We weren't just grieving anymore, we were building. Slowly, methodically, like laying bricks around a rotten truth. I wasn't hunting revenge, I wasn't trying to destroy. I wanted the truth to stand where lies had been painted. I wanted my name to mean something again. Just after 5, while I was organizing the scanned pages into digital folders out in the garden shed, my makeshift office, Seren knocked on the back gate. She was holding a bouquet and a pie, both looking like they belonged to a Hallmark ad. Her face wore that tight, southern kind of smile. I didn't invite her in. I figured you could use something sweet, she said, setting the pie down on the bench beside the flower pots. Hard times. They do strange things to people. I said nothing. Just nodded once, slow. She shifted, hands folded neatly. I just want us to remember Rowan with grace, not get buried under paperwork, bitterness, or worse. Dignity matters, Marisol. Her voice was sugar-laced, but the bitterness clung underneath like mold on bread. Then, as she turned to leave, a folded receipt fluttered from her bag. She didn't pick it up. After she left, I looked, high-end boutique, downtown. Date? 1 month before Rowan died. His name on the billing line. I sat with that receipt for a long while, not angry, numb, like cold steel pressed to the chest. I remembered Rowan giving me a modest watch for our last anniversary. Money's tight, he had whispered. But now, this receipt didn't whisper, it screamed. I took a bus the next morning, walked into that boutique like I belonged. I told the clerk I was there to return a gift from my husband. She smiled warmly, pulled up the order in seconds. Oh, yes, he wanted the engraving done fast for your anniversary. My throat locked. I asked what it said. She read it from the record without blinking. To the one I should have married. I thanked her, walked out, didn't say a word, didn't need to. By the time I got home, I had drafted a formal letter. Simple, measured, not a lawsuit, just a legal inquiry. Seren got it by courier. I didn't expect silence. I didn't get it. That night, she posted a picture of Rowan and herself online, captioned with, "Grief makes people cruel." Comments rolled in, pity, sympathy. Some called me bitter, others said I should let go. A friend called, voice low, "Careful, Mari. Seren's not just a grieving sister-in-law. She's connected, knows people, legal people." I took a breath. "Good," I said. "So do I." I started writing. A quiet public statement. Just facts. Nothing more. Facts only someone close to Rowan would know. Facts no one else could fake. I wasn't here for the money anymore. I was here to rewrite the story they tried to erase. After midnight, I was about to shut down my laptop when I heard the thump at the front porch. I opened the door and found a small padded envelope with no return address. Inside, a flash drive, a sticky note on top, scratched in rushed pen. "If something happens to me, share this." I held it in my palm, heavy with meaning. I didn't know if it was a threat or a lifeline, but I knew one thing: someone didn't want me to stop. The flash drive sat on my desk like a coiled snake. The garden shed was silent except for the hum of the laptop fan. My fingers hovered over the USB port, but I didn't plug it in right away. Whoever left it had known exactly where to reach me, what to hand me. That alone said enough. Finally, I pushed it in. The screen blinked once, then filled with folders labeled only by dates. Audio files. I opened the first. Rowan's voice, thin, weak, hospital soft, slid through the speakers. I want it done before..." His voice trailed off. Then Seren's voice, sharp and sure. "I'll handle her for you. Don't worry. I'll protect the assets. We'll get you out clean." My throat closed. Another file. Seren coaching him like a patient child. "Sign here, Rowan. Trust me. This is for your peace of mind." His murmur. "I don't want her hurt." Seren's reply. "You won't have to see it." I didn't cry, not at first. I copied each file to 3 separate drives, labeled them. Tucked one into the lining of my purse, another into a kitchen drawer under the batteries, another to a cloud account under a fake name. Hours later, sitting in the dark with my back against the shed wall, the sobs came. Not for Rowan dying, but for Rowan living like that. For letting her twist his last months into this. I pressed my palms to my eyes. The sound of my father's voice drifted back. Silence protects the liar, not the victim. I had protected everyone but myself. Dawn crept under the door. My body ached from the cold floor, but my mind was a live wire. I needed air, coffee, a neutral place. I grabbed my bag, the flash drive zipped into an inside pocket, and walked to the diner on Maple Street where no one knew me. Angie poured my coffee, eyes tired but kind. She was young, maybe late 20s. You look like you've been up all night, she said. I gave a brittle laugh. You could say that. Somehow, within minutes, her story spilled out. Her brothers had cheated her out of their mother's small inheritance. Paperwork she never read. Promises she believed. Watching her talk was like seeing my own reflection 10 years younger. Quiet, compliant, crushed. They told me it wasn't worth fighting, she said, wiping down the counter. So I didn't. I still regret it. Something in me snapped awake. Don't let them keep that hold, I said quietly. You're worth more than their lies. She blinked, slipped a folded note onto the counter with my check. There's a lawyer. Helped my friend. Name's Scott Dalton. He knows probate fraud like nobody else. Tell him Angie sent you. Outside, the morning light felt harsher. I called Dalton from the sidewalk. His voice was brisk but interested. He agreed to a discreet meeting later in the week. I walked to the copy center down the block and printed a clean transcript of the worst recording, Saren saying, "I'll handle her for you." Across the top, in my own handwriting, I scrawled, "This is only the beginning." I didn't tell Elaine yet, not because I didn't trust her, but because I was learning. Control your pieces, hold your cards. When I stepped out with the manila envelope under my arm, I caught sight of a black SUV idling across the street. Windows tinted, engine running. A man inside lowered his sunglasses, slow and deliberate, like a dare. I stared back, didn't flinch. For the first time since the funeral, I wasn't afraid. I was furious. And fury, I realized, was a better fuel than grief. I crossed to my car, feeling the weight of the flash drive, the transcript, and something new, resolve settling into my bones. They had turned me into a widow on paper, but I was done playing that part. Garrett Lunsford's office was hidden behind an old insurance firm, the kind of place where you had to know someone to find the right door. The hallway smelled of paper and coffee gone cold. Garrett wasn't what I expected. No polished smile, no rehearsed sympathy, just a man in a navy suit with a legal pad already open. "You've brought quite the storm," he said after I slid the flash drive across the desk. For the first time in weeks, someone looked me in the eye and didn't flinch. Garrett explained it straight. Seren had used power of attorney while Rowan was slipping in and out of lucidity. "If we can prove he lacked capacity when those documents were signed," Garrett said, "we can void them. She'd be exposed for fraud." He slid a stack of papers toward me, limited representation, my signature. His pen was heavy in my hand. Signing it felt less like asking for help and more like planting a flag. Garrett's voice lowered. "I'll take this on. But I need you to understand, people like Seren fight dirty. Don't engage her alone." I gave a small, tired laugh. "I already have." He raised an eyebrow. "Then you know what's coming." When I left his office, the afternoon sun was sharp enough to sting. For the first time since Rowan's funeral, I wasn't just angry. I had footing. By evening, that footing cracked. Mrs. Callahan from across the street called me. "Marisol, honey, I think someone was in your garage." She sounded worried. "Looked like your sister-in-law had a key." She didn't see me, but I saw her. My heart thudded as I unlocked my own front door. Drawers slightly open, papers shifted. Nothing stolen, just rearranged. The kind of violation that leaves fingerprints on your mind, not your belongings. I went to the landline. Seren answered on the second ring. "I heard you came by," I said quietly. "I don't know what you're talking about," she replied, sugar in her voice. "But maybe you should focus on healing instead of paperwork. This isn't worth ruining what's left of your dignity." The air between us stretched thin. I hung up without a word. Her denial was almost more threatening than an admission. I didn't think. I drove. The sky was bruised purple by the time I pulled up to her house. Seren opened the door in a silk robe, eyes widening just a flicker before she smiled. "I don't have time for games," I said, stepping past her into the foyer. My voice stayed level. "Rowan's will, the power of attorney, the transfers. I have it all. You no longer get to rewrite the ending." She tilted her head, the picture of patience. Rowan feared you, you know. At the end, he wanted distance. I placed the flash drive on her counter. Here's what's going to happen. Legal action has already started. Next comes exposure. Her lips twitched, fear or fury, I couldn't tell. You'll regret this, she whispered. No, I said, turning to leave. You will! Back in my car, the adrenaline collapsed into a tremor. My hands shook on the steering wheel. I hadn't realized how much it would still hurt to hear her use Rowan's name like a weapon. The memories came anyway. Our first apartment, him choosing me over his family, over Seren. Had he changed his mind? Or had I just never seen who he really was? His last voicemail echoed in my head. Don't let them turn you bitter. That single line steadied me, not bitter, focused. I was almost home when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. The text. You made a mistake. Attached was a photo of my house at night, porch light glowing, time-stamped just minutes ago. I stared at it until the screen dimmed. The war wasn't just legal anymore. It was personal, and I was done playing defense. The photo kept me awake all night. The angle of the porch light, the shadow of my garden fence. Whoever took it was in my backyard. I zoomed in until the pixels blurred, searching for a reflection, a shape, something. Nothing but darkness and my own fear staring back at me. By morning, my head ached from thinking in circles. I called the police. They were polite, almost bored. No crime committed, the officer said. Just someone taking a picture. His tone reminded me of every time I'd tried to be heard and wasn't, as a daughter, a wife, and now a widow. The click when he hung up sounded like a door locking. Instead of retreating, I took the unease and let it harden. I changed my locks, installed 2 cameras, set up motion lights. I wasn't going to sit in my living room waiting for the next warning. If someone wanted me scared, they'd have to do better than a photograph. By noon, I was at the courthouse, my bag heavy with files. The clerk behind the counter glanced at my paperwork and lowered his voice. You didn't get this from me, he murmured, sliding a thin folder toward me. It wasn't on the registry list. Inside was a will from 5 years ago. Rowan's handwriting, his signature, my name as sole beneficiary. My throat closed. This was before the hospital stays, before Seren's sudden helpfulness. In the margin, a note. Trust only the one who stayed when I broke. That year came back sharp as glass. Rowan in a hospital bed, panic attacks rolling through him like storms. I fed him, soothed him, stayed nights without sleep. Seren visited once, called him embarrassing, and walked out. He cried into my hands. You're all I have left. If I forget that, don't let me. I blinked the memory away and stared at the newer will, the one that had gutted me 6 months before his death. How could the same man who wrote that margin note sign a document erasing me? I carried the old will to Garrett's office that afternoon. He read it once, twice, then met my eyes. If we can prove the newer will was forged or signed under duress, this one stands. Then we fight, I said. He tapped his pen. It's going to get ugly. Seren won't go down quietly. I'm done being quiet, I answered. That evening, I sat at my desk drafting my personal statement for court. Not just facts, my voice, the nights in the hospital, the promises Rowan had made, the life we actually lived. I planned a small interview with a community paper too, a way to get the truth out before Seren spun it again. The phone buzzed near midnight, voicemail from an unknown number. A distorted voice filled the room. You think this is about money? You're digging into something bigger than him. I replayed it, again and again, listening not just for threats, but for names hidden under the static. Rowan may be gone, but his secrets were just waking up. 2 weeks. That's how long I had to prepare. Every day felt like a pressure cooker, but I didn't let it rattle me. Garrett scheduled the final prep at his office, a quiet space tucked behind an insurance firm, the same one we first met in. This time, we weren't alone. The handwriting expert, an older woman with a steady voice and sharper eyes, laid out the documents like puzzle pieces. Rowan's old birthday cards, the journal we shared during his treatment year, checks he signed, even little notes he'd leave on the fridge, Every curve of ink became evidence. Then we compared them to the will Saren submitted. It wasn't just off, it was clumsy. We rehearsed my court statement. Garrett urged me to keep it short, but I said no. I'd stayed silent for too long. If this was my one shot to say what our life really was, I was going to take every word I'd earned. That night, I laid out my outfit. Dark blue, no jewelry, hair tied back, not flashy, not broken, just whole. I didn't want pity. I wanted them to see that I had survived. I tucked Rowan's ring into my purse, a piece of truth to hold on to. Garrett warned me that Saren had brought in a litigator known for brutal cross-examinations. I nodded, calm. This wasn't revenge. This was restoration. The courthouse felt cold, even in spring. People shuffled in like it was any other case, but for me, this was the day I stopped being the woman they erased. Saren came in like it was a fashion show. High heels, chin up, not a crack in her surface. Her mother flanked one side, and on the other, Rowan's college friend Thomas, who hadn't called me once after Rowan died. That stung more than I expected. Then it was my turn. I took the stand. At first, my voice felt like it didn't belong to me, but as I spoke about the nights in the hospital, the dinners Rowan and I used to cook together, the inside jokes we had, I saw heads turn. People started listening. I laid out the cards, the journal, the deed. Then the expert stepped forward and testified that the new will was a forgery. That's when Saren's attorney snapped. "Isn't it true that you were controlling? That Rowan wanted peace near the end and you refused to let go?" Garrett objected, but I answered anyway. Rowan wanted peace, and he found it, with me, until someone tried to rewrite our truth. Then Garrett held up the old will. In the margin, he wrote this: "Trust only the one who stayed when I broke." That was Marisol. Saren's turn came. She played it cool for about 5 minutes. Then, under pressure, she cracked. "He was paranoid," she snapped. "Weak, dependent, and she was just a paid caretaker with benefits." Gasps echoed across the room. The judge slammed her gavel, reminding everyone to remain civil. I didn't flinch. My fingers wrapped tight around Rowan's ring. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me hurt. Garrett's closing was quiet, but cut deep. Even in death, truth fights to be seen. Today, you decide whether love means nothing when written in ink. The judge took an hour. Felt like days. Then came the verdict. The court restored the original will. The home, the estate, it was all returned to me. And more than that, I was recognized, formally and finally, as Rowan's widow. Outside, reporters circled. Cameras flashed. Someone shoved a mic toward me, asking for a statement. I didn't plan a speech. I just said, "He was my husband." That was always the truth. No paper could erase it. Garrett smiled. "You ever think of writing a memoir?" I laughed for the first time in months. "Let me breathe first." That night, I got home just before dark, exhausted, ready to sleep for a week, but there was a box on my doorstep, no postage, no name. Inside, I found Rowan's old cufflinks and a note. "We're not finished. I thought court ended it all." I was wrong. Someone's still playing the game. Morning light poured in through the thin curtains like it hadn't in months, quiet but steady. I sat up and smelled coffee. Garrett must have left it before heading back to his office. For the first time since the funeral, my hands didn't tremble reaching for the mug. The judge's ruling kept replaying in my head, not like a victory lap, but like a steady drumbeat. I was no longer erased. I walked to my desk. My proof pile sat there, tidy now. Photos, recordings, deeds, all stacked in order. On top lay the original will, restored, stamped with the court's seal. I touched it, felt its rough edge. They'd tried to make me invisible. Today, I'd written my name back into the world. I dressed simply, hair pinned back. No jewelry except Rowan's ring. Dignity, not show. Outside, the courthouse lawn buzzed with reporters. Flashbulbs blinked like fireflies. I didn't flinch this time. Garrett stood nearby, hands folded behind his back, ready if I faltered. Seren was across the way, stone-faced, her attorney whispering into her ear. We didn't exchange words. There was nothing left to say. I unfolded my short statement, written in my own hand. My voice stayed steady. The truth outlasts silence. My name was never just on paper. It was lived. The crowd murmured. Cameras clicked. I saw a neighbor in the back, Mrs. Shaw, lean in and whisper, "You did what many of us were afraid to try." Relief didn't feel like freedom, it felt like responsibility. Somewhere, another woman was sitting at a kitchen table, sorting bills and lies. I wanted her to know she could stand up too. That afternoon, I drove to my old house for a final walkthrough before renovations. The walls still smelled faintly of Rowan's aftershave, a ghost more intimate than any photo. In the master bedroom, something glimmered near the dresser leg. I knelt and picked it up. My leaf-shaped silver earring, the one Rowan gave me when money was tight. I'd worn it almost every day since. Somewhere in the chaos, it had gone missing. I held it in my palm and closed my eyes. That tiny piece of silver had been a weight these past weeks, a reminder of promises cracked open. Now it felt different, reclaimed, not lost. I placed it gently in a box with the restored will, closed the lid, and snapped the lock shut with resolve. Later, at the cafe where I'd first met Angie, I found her already waiting. She grinned nervously and reached across the table. "I read about you in the paper. You inspired me. I called my brother. I'm taking them to court." I handed her a copy of my court statement. "It's yours now. Do what you need to do with it." Garrett joined us midway through, setting down his briefcase. "You know, Marisol, your case could become a guide for others. You could write it." I smiled but shook my head. "I'll write from the heart first, then from the records. No more letting someone else narrate my life." That evening, Jem stopped by. He didn't say much, just a shy hug at the door. "You're different," he said softly. "Stronger." I journaled quietly after he left. Not a record, not evidence, just words. "You may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, but still, like air, I'll rise." Maya Angelou's line. It fit. I walked to the window. The street was quiet, almost still. For the first time, the weight had shifted off my shoulders. Scars remained, but my name was mine again. Then my laptop pinged. A new email. Subject line. "There's more they never told you." I stared at it, pulse steady. I thought the final will judged all. But their secrets still breathe in the shadows.